So when the Star Wars Original Trilogy debuted on DVD, it was met with a number of criticisms, not only because of the further alterations George Lucas made to the films, but because of many audio and video technical issues that arose for the new digitally remastering process. So let's delve into the home video retrospective of the 2004 Star Wars Trilogy DVD set. So at its retail debut in 1996, DVD eventually became the dominant home video format, usurping VHS and Laserdisc, with its utilization of digital video and audio with potential for supplemental material, and this all became much more of an affordable, accessible format than Laserdisc was, and moving forward to the point where this entire thing started setting sales records. We had something like The Matrix hit this format in '99, it blew it off the water. It's like, this is exactly what it is. It's like taking off and leaving everything else in its dust. And so when you started getting all these different films getting laid out, like you got like Terminator 2, and you got Indiana Jones, and you got E.T., and various other things, just like a lot of these big films getting like really established on the format, really coming out in a very much a quick succession. Like, it's very much populating the format with new special editions, remasters, all the type of stuff. Star Wars is definitely one of those things that started getting clamored for very much. And even though George Lucas even kind of stayed off the entire thing for a while, like when The Phantom Menace hit home video, still took another 2 years from '99 for it to hit DVD, before he kind of laid his claim on. Is very much comfortable and confident about the format to put out on that format. And so with the original Star Wars trilogy being released in '97 with the special editions, and then VHS and Laserdisc, video, CD, stuff like that here and there, but people were kind of clamoring when they come to DVD and all the type of stuff, like when it's gonna make that next step forward into that digital realm. It was very much interesting, I think, because I remember so clearly the day I woke up late and read the news on DVDactive.com, which no longer exists, but I remember it so very well. It was like, the one day I got to sleep in and sleep late, this news breaks. And it was a whole big type of thing, and it was just such a real big fervor. Like, the fact of the matter is, I went out at midnight to get this thing, and unfortunately, kind of when I was reading the sale ads like Best Buy, it's like there are only certain locations doing midnight openings. So a bunch of us are standing outside of a Best Buy late at night, and they're not open. And we eventually realized, like, they're not opening. So we realized we got to go to the Kmart that's open 24 hours in the next town over. So we're all just raced over there and bought it there. So I remember that night so vividly, so clearly, and I went off and kind of started watching the stuff as quickly as I possibly could. And so I was very much happy about it at the time, at the moment of purchase and whatnot, but there are definitely a lot of things to get into about how these DVDs were put together in the midst of, after we got Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and right before Revenge of the Sith would hit the following year in theaters, and of course DVD and all that type of stuff after that point. But interesting point in time here, the fact that DVD's shown at this point in time, it can do marvelous things. You can get some really fabulous transfers, do some extensive, amazing type of things. Like the DVD supplements on this set are really fantastic. The new documentaries, the audio commentary stuff, the trailers, all the different things, like they really poured it in here. Like, supplemental wise, it's a fantastic set. Like, invaluable type of stuff on this thing. Just the Empire Dreams documentary alone is just a landmark thing to document the creation of these films. So it's like, it's just an essential piece. And I love the fact that it's been actually produced in HD. You can watch it up on Disney Plus in proper HD format and stuff like that, but it was such a big deal. And the set came together in that age that everything was just like absolutely perfect. Just before we started, a few years later, we started getting Blu-ray in its kind of infancy and stuff like that, where that's still kind of a bit of a ways to kind of get up on this best legs. So it's kind of an interesting point to wait. At this point in time in '04, when there's a lot of great track record to say DVD is really great, you can do a lot of fantastic things, but only if you do it the right way. And that's where the things come into with this retrospective. That, like, if this was a pinnacle release and there's nothing that interesting to talk about, I wouldn't be talking about it. It was like, oh, that's perfect. Discussion over. But there's problems. There's different things to discuss in the whole thing, especially when you kind of, again, as I've shown before, and I've kept all these captures of Laserdisc and various other things together, to kind of go back and look how everything's kind of changed over time and how this DVD release is very much problematic in a lot of different cases, mainly by the fact that they weren't just going to go and take like all the stuff they did in 97, we're just going to throw it on the DVD and that's going to be it. We're going to maybe grab the inner positive or something like that and kind of just transfer that over and maybe little adjustments for the digital format and just kind of like be done with that. But no, it's a lot more complicated than that. One, George wants to make more changes. Not a whole slew of changes, but there's enough changes here where like he wants to go back and start things over again to a certain degree. And so, problem was, when I'm talking about the 97 special editions, those prints were damaged. Like the original Star Wars print was so bad in shape. They had to do so much work in a physical sense in terms of chemical baths and hand wiping and physical restoration stuff. But now, we're going to scan it in and do it with the computer. We're not going to do the physical stuff with the film elements. We're going to bring it into the computer and try to do it there. Which is not a problem in and of itself, but more the problem of what they go about in the entire process of making that happen that doesn't result in all the best elements coming together in the best quality they could have. Now, according to Volume 29 of Videography by way of the Secret History of Star Wars website, apparently the 97 special editions were all scanned in at 2K resolution, but for these remasters, they were scanned in at 1080p resolution, which is slightly less than 2K. Now, this might seem a little bit odd, but when you start thinking about how the fact that George was photographing episodes 2 and 3 with digital cameras in 1080p resolution, starts to kind of make sense to you. Why he's not thinking much more future-proof in that regard, doing maybe a 2K, 4K, 6K scan, because like a lot of films at this point in time are getting scanned in much higher resolutions, like every time they go in to kind of restore The Wizard of Oz, it gets an upgrade. It's like 6, 8K resolution type stuff. Even the Blade Runner restoration, it's kind of dabbling around this point in time, will eventually be restored in like 8K resolution with a lot of the effect shots and that sort of thing, and that thing looks fabulous. And the fact of the matter is, it just seems a little kind of odd that it's like we're just kind of like going to stunt at this point in time. Like if we want to do, if we're looking forward to higher resolutions later on, we'll have to go back and do everything all over again. It's kind of odd to kind of not kind of go and future-proof it to a certain degree and go a higher resolution on that type of thing. But this is what they choose to do. And the fact of the matter is, like I said with the 97 Special Edition Retrospective, the original Star Wars film from 77, later known as The New Hope, had a lot of print damage. Even though they cleaned a lot of stuff up in 97 and kind of reassembled the negative and stuff like that, there's still a lot of stuff they want to do very much meticulously in that regard. So, while Empire and Jedi were all kind of handled with color grading and stuff like that through ILM, they gave New Hope off to production engineer Rick Dean over at International Video Conversions to kind of go through it very professionally, very rigorously, to kind of fix up the entire thing, to kind of balance out all the color grading on the entire film, with all these different qualities and problems they had with the negative and stuff like that, were not quite as normalized as the sequels would be. But the entire thing, like, okay, they end up doing all the color grading, and it's being supervised and approved by George. He's reviewing all this. All this stuff is him, so anything we have problems about, one way or another, George is the final say in everything. George is the one to appease, he's the one to say yes, he's the one to sign off on everything. But the interesting thing is, okay, they do the color grading first. Then the restoration stuff gets sent off to Lowry Digital to clean up the film. Clean up all the dirt and speckles and all the different real kind of print damage and whatnot. It's done after the color grade. To me, that seems kind of backwards. It feels like you would clean up and restore it, then you do the grading afterwards, after everything's nice and clean and pristine, and then you balance out the colors and all the type of stuff. So it seems like a odd choice to go in that direction on the whole thing. But Lowry Digital takes the whole thing. They take this big freaking 6 terabyte server up to Lucasfilm Skywalker Ranch and kind of dump all the data into their server. But particularly, they were asked to sharpen up the entire image, which is a little bit of a thing that permeates throughout all these digital formats and whatnot, even back to Laserdisc, stuff like that. If you try to do too much sharpening, you create these edge halos, and you kind of make things look artificial to a certain degree. Like some people are like, oh, that older scan looks sharper to me, but that's not true to what the film looked like. That's kind of over sharpening to kind of artificially bring out more detail in the whole thing that's not organic to how the film was actually photographed and how it's supposed to look. So want to look at kind of organics or certain, and there's certain things like cinematographer Gil Taylor on the original film kind of used some diffusion lenses and stuff like that, that some things were much more insistent by George than they were approved and kind of recommended by Gil Taylor. But George decided on that, but now he's kind of saying, let's sharpen all the stuff up that I kind of decided back in 76 should be kind of soft and diffused and stuff like that. So it's interesting little kind of changes and ideas are kind of going off here and there about how to approach the visual image of these films in that regard. But it took over 600 Macintosh G5 computers with dual processors with 2,400 gigabytes of RAM and 476 terabytes of hard drive space to process all three films with just over 30 days to do them each. It's a lot of work and a little bit of a time. You think a lot of the stuff would take much longer to get done, especially with the volume of work you're thinking this thing needs to get done. You're doing brand new restorations, brand new scans, all that type of stuff from scratch. It's a lot of stuff. When they're doing it physical back in the day, it took a long, long time. Digital, you could do it faster. And the fact is, Lowry Digital did have a certain program with an algorithm that could kind of go in and kind of clean up dirt and speckles and whatnot kind of automatically, but they had to write brand new algorithms for all the stuff that was kind of damaged on A New Hope. So like the stuff they had was not sufficient, so they had to go back in and redo it to a certain degree, kind of rewrite the entire program to make sure it picked up exactly what it needed to. It wasn't pinning out things that were supposed to not get fixed. Like when you got a lot of things like the sands of Tatooine swirling around on screen or the stars against a black backdrop of space, it can kind of pick up the wrong things here and there, so they kind of have to train a little bit more rigorously to point out exactly what is damaged and what's supposed to still be kept within the actual frame. But the color grading on these DVDs is where things get really kind of mangled up to a certain degree. And before I really get into that, interesting, because you look at all these different transfers, like original US Laserdiscs are very, very warm, like blanket warm, all over the place. And you get the 93 THX Definitive Collection Laserdisc, a lot more balanced colors to a certain degree, but you got all that digital noise reduction type of stuff that's kind of very primitive on top of it that kind of smears the image around and doesn't have as much detail organically. Then you get up to 97 and things look a lot better to a certain degree with New Hope being graded from George's own non-fade Technicolor print of the original film, probably making it the most faithful version back to the original theatrical release, but Empire and Jedi can kind of lean a bit heavy on towards the blue casts. So all these kind of look a little different here and there, and it's interesting as I was kind of researching this thing, kind of thinking things like, none of the cinematographers apparently were ever consulted about these transfers. Because a lot of times you would see, like, especially today when you're looking at loud 4K transfers, stuff like that, they'll say, oh, we got the cinematographer to come in and kind of approve the transfer, kind of supervise things. Well, Gil Taylor, who shot the original film back in 76, he was still around in 2013. Pierce Jasuski, who shot Empire Strikes Back, he's still around. Alan Hume, who shot Return of the Jedi, he passed away in 2010. But all these guys were still around and very much available back in 2004, I'd imagine, if they wanted to go off and kind of have them consult on the entire thing to say, hey, here's the original way we intend to shoot this thing, how we use these different color temperatures, how we put the film together, how we design the shots. But apparently it's just George, to a large degree, kind of signing off on this, that, and the other thing, and no one else really kind of coming in to kind of counterbalancing certain things here and there, and I to consult, stuff like that. So I felt like that was kind of something interesting. Like I did a little bit of a light search, but the figuring that I've done so many of these retrospectives on everything since the inception of Star Wars on home video and all these different things, never once has any of that type of stuff come up about a cinematographer or something else like that coming in and saying, hey, we're consulted on this type of thing and say this is the way we feel that this is the most representative of how we originally photographed the film. So, interesting to note on that regard, but there are some points with these DVDs that they actually kind of resemble a little bit of the 93 Definitive Collection releases with some of the skin tones and the blue skies you have in certain places here. But other times, it kind of leans a little bit more towards the 97 Special Edition with some of those blue casts and various other things. So it's interesting, like, it's kind of a balancing act between two different masters, plus this one does have a lot more color nuance to it because you're kind of mashing this for digital formats. You have a little more color depth to deal with, a little more stability in the image, kind of work on that regard. But Kind of thing that really starts sticking out the appeal like pretty early on is the fact that this does have a lot of crushed blacks. This is when you take the blacks of the entire thing and you really bring them down, where you lose a lot of the detail in the mids and a lot of shadow detail is lost. Especially when you have a character like Darth Vader who's all black with just a couple of highlights on him. It creates such a contrast. Like you lose a lot of detail in his entire costume in a lot of different places, and especially when you get to like Return of the Jedi, where also Luke's all in black. You have the entire scene on Endor in that little corridor, that bunker, and like there's like no separation. You got the black outfit on Luke, you got all black Darth Vader, you got this kind of subtly dark background going into the Force of Endor. It's like there's almost no separation. Like it's all just kind of bleeding into one another because they just made so much contrast. But interesting enough, like even though there's a lot more contrast, they kind of dialed back the luminance. So it's not as bright as it should be for as much contrast as there is. So it's interesting in that regard. A lot of futzing around here that kind of seems very peculiar choices to make for the entire format here. Like even the kind of lush, earthy tones of the Ewok village in Return of the Jedi kind of get a little lost from how dark the image is kind of getting. Because when you look back to the previous transfers, like you can see a lot more detail in that, a lot more kind of color detail overall. And this rolls into a bit of a bigger problem with these entire transfers, the fact of these strange color casts getting dumped over certain scenes in the films, which starts affecting something very, very particular in this regard, with the odd lightsaber blade colors going on here, because they really kind of futz them up. Like there's a big inconsistency and very much glaring problems that really stuck out to a lot of people pretty much instantaneously when they got these DVDs. Because in A New Hope, Luke's lightsaber is supposed to be blue. The one he gets handed down from Obi-Wan Kenobi says it was his father's. It's supposed to be blue. It looks green, but it's not consistent. And like the color is all messed up in certain degrees, and a lot of times throughout this entire trilogy, Darth Vader's lightsaber doesn't look red. It looks pink. And a lot of different cases, especially when you get to Return of the Jedi and the two sabers clashing for the Emperor, the cores have been wiped out. And apparently they did a lot of re-rotoscoping, like they redid a lot of the sabers and the whole thing, but they really botched it up. Like the fact that there's no core, no white core on Vader's saber in some cases, it's really egregious. It's not consistent. From one shot to the next, it's not entirely consistent what color is really kind of, what tone is really getting on, what shade the blade really is, everything like that. So if you went back and redid them, they should be consistent. But because a lot of the color manipulation they did in that entire thing, which is very suspect, of all the different casts and the different things they shift things around, it really messes with the colors so much, like it's really egregious on that level. And there's even further color inconsistency throughout the entire first film, because a lot of times like the saturation is really cranked up for a lot of places. Like when you're looking at R2 and 3PO out on the sands of Tatooine, and like it's so saturated, like the gold plating on 3PO is so bold, so vibrant, and like all the other stuff, like everything in the entire sequence, like it's just so poppy, like almost overly poppy to a certain degree. But then you got some effects shots, like the opening shot of the film with the Blade Runner and the Star Destroyer over Tatooine. Compare back to the other transfers before this. Like the engine cores, a lot of the laser blasts are literally drained of color, like so much. They're nowhere as bold and vibrant as they were before. But also you look later on to other sequences like Millennium Falcon kind of fighting the TIE fighters later on. Or you have the entire assault on the Death Star, like laser blasts look fine, everything looks just pretty much okay, just maybe a little bit bolder than they were before, but they don't exhibit the same problem as other sequences, so there's no real nuanced quality control here. Like some scenes have one problem, but another scene has a different problem with the color, and it doesn't entirely balance out, which is weird because, again, they gave the first film, A New Hope, off to a professional production engineer to actually do a very rigorous color restoration on the entire thing, so it's very weird that there's this much problem with it. Now, there's certain other things that go off with Empire and Jedi, in particular for those different versions. Like with Empire, there's certain shots, certain points in time in certain scenes, where like the contrast kind of blows out the highlights a little bit. And the kind of blue cast in some places, especially like on Hoth, some of those blue casts really drain out the color of the skin tones. Like, it's not consistent. It's not like every single scene or whatnot, but every so often, it really kind of stands out. And so when you get off to something even like Dagobah, very much a color change, like it's now drenched in blue. So much in that regard. When you have previous transfers, they have a little bit more of that kind of browns and yellows and kind of greens here and there, a little bit more earthy colors in the mix of the entire thing, with some blue touches here and there. But it goes much more further into the blue in this regard. But I like Cloud City though in this version, because I've always had a little bit of a thing back and forth. I've always liked kind of the golden hues some of the previous transfers had for the exteriors, like when they have the landing platform, we have Han and Leia and Chewie and whatnot kind of meeting Lando there, and you have the kind of sunset glow or whatnot. Some of the transfers kind of drained it out, kind of a little more balanced, kind of neutralized to a certain degree. But also when you have the original US lasers where everything was warm, it kind of made the interiors warm as well. This one in 2004, it's kind of balanced that out to a certain degree. Like the landing platform has got a little more golden hue, but the interiors are more purely white to a certain degree. So it's interesting to think how that kind of, some things are good, some things are a little more problematic. Like the entire thing on the Blockade Runner with the original film, it has a considerably more blue tone to it than how this exact same setting appears in Revenge of the Sith, which is being produced at the same time as these DVDs. But the one thing to know about Return of the Jedi is the Force Ghost glow around Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like in Empire, it's very consistent. It's very much like, it looks very consistent to the previous transfers, but in Jedi, it kind of changes from one thing to the next, and especially this one, it's really drained down. It's really minimized to a certain degree, and it's like, it's weird. Like, the blue glow's kind of gone. It's a lot more faded to a certain degree. It's very weird. Like, the same effect in both films is handled differently. It's very weird. I don't understand. It's like, again, lack of consistency in these color grades on these different DVDs. Like, again, you've got crushed blacks all over the place in all three films, and different sequences are handled differently from what you had seen before, and how things are graded in a certain way where they don't have a consistency in terms of like how certain effects look from one film to the next, one scene to the next. Various sort of things like that. It just builds and builds and builds when you're watching all three films, and you start seeing all these little weird abnormalities and inconsistencies, all these little kind of mangled colors to certain degrees. It starts getting on you here and there or whatnot, especially like the carbon fusion chamber. Like, it's always been beautifully shot, but they really cranked up again the saturation versus previous transfers. It just feels like they just want to crank it up to make it more vibrant for DVD, because like if it looks too subdued, they may feel like, oh, we didn't master it as well as we could, and really make use of everything we had as opposed to let's kind of make them look bolder, more vibrant, stuff like that. So I feel like that's kind of the edict behind this. The other particular type of thing in terms of technical qualities are the audio mixes on all three films. Now, these are remixed in Dolby Digital 5.1 EX, which means you have a rear matrix center surround channel in addition to the 5.1 discrete channels. Now, one thing in particular to note is the fact that Ben Burtt, fantastic sound designer in the original trilogy, and also a later editor on the entire prequel trilogy to an extent, kind of supervised the entire sound mixes for the DVD versions, and there's a lot of problems with the entire thing because apparently he's kind of favored sound effects and dialogue over John Williams' Oscar-winning score. There's a lot of points in time with the Death Star attack and the trench run where his music is kind of buried in the mix, especially the point where the X-Wings go in for their first dive. The entire fanfare there is almost completely inaudible. And apparently Ben Burtt overcranked all the LFE subwoofer channels on all three films. And there's another thing with the fact that some of the surround channels are flipped. Like the front left and right channels where something's kind of panning left and the rear channels is panning right. There's some points in time where they're all screwed up. And that's no damn good. And that's just like, it's disorienting. It's not a good mix in that regard. It's clearly an error that was made. But apparently every time someone kind of came to Lucasfilm and kind of brought up these issues, they kind of give some canned corporate response saying like, oh, it was an artistic decision or some other little thing. They wouldn't really own up to the fact that there was a problem anywhere. Like, all it's just like, you think there's a problem there, we think it's fine. There's no problem here for us. Like, oh, nice being, we're so astounded by fans being so astute and very clearly paying attention to the details and everything like that. But, oh, there's not really a problem with that. That was the way we were intended for it to be. So, why? That can't possibly be the truth for everything that happens that everyone brought up as a issue with these DVDs. And so something like that is clearly an error that you would definitely do a disc replacement program like that later on. Because, like, even not audio-wise, but video-wise, when the Back to the Future original DVD set was released, there were widescreen framing issues with, I think, maybe like part 2, part 3, and Universal did issue a disc replacement program to fix the problem. And so, nothing happened here with Lucasfilm or 20th Century Fox. So, a lot of problems on the entire release that doesn't really get addressed. And a little kind of quirky type of thing in the fact that there's a one scene with Tarkin, Peter Cushing's wonderful character in the film, where he's talking about blowing up Alderaan to test the Death Star's destructive power. And there's a weird point in time with a piece of his dialogue that the quality shifts dramatically.
We have no weapons. You can't
You will
possibly...
convert another target, a military target, then name the system.
And when you listen to previous masters, audio sounds perfectly fine, very smooth between the different lines of dialogue.
Alderaan is peace, but we have no weapons. You can't
You will
possibly...
convert another target, a military target, then name the system.
Alderaan is peace, but we have no weapons. You can't
You will
possibly...
convert another target, a military target, then name the system.
Alderaan is peace, but we have no weapons. You can't
You will
possibly...
convert another target, a military target, then name the system.
Now, certain people kind of speculate maybe, hey, maybe the original audio was damaged. They had to take it from a different source and it doesn't quite EQ the same way. But when you start listening to the Dolby Atmos mixed in the 4Ks, sounds perfectly fine. No problem there.
Alderaan is peace, but we have no weapons. You can't
You will
possibly...
convert another target, a military target, then name the system.
Much more the astute fans are kind of examining things very carefully on a technical level, really kind of combed over these things. I found all these different problems and like, oh, that really doesn't seem up to specs for a 2004 DVD of this caliber. This kind of size and whatnot should be treated to a certain better degree than what we're getting here. But of course, as I alluded to earlier, the fact is we're getting more changes done from George Lucas. In 97, got the special edition, a whole bunch of changes, the whole thing. But now we're kind of getting in the habit of, like, every time this is going to debut on a new format, George is going to go back and make a few extra alterations to the films. And so that kind of gets a little bit on people's nerves. Some of the changes here are maybe okay, maybe contentious, debatable type of things, but we'll go through them as quickly as possible. And the first thing is, we have a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away pop up on the screen. It now matches the text from Attack of the Clones. So we're trying to create a uniformity of certain things across all 6 films. But we don't get another thing changed until we're in the Dune Sea with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ben Kenobi, where he has the entire kind of loud shriek he has kind of scare off the Tusken Raiders. Now in the original version, it sounded like this. But now George decided to go back and kind of change it around. Apparently it's supposed to approximate the sound of a krayt dragon. And so it feels kind of more of an arbitrary choice to a certain degree. It doesn't feel like it has much of a bearing one way or another towards certain people's opinion about these releases. But they kind of move forward into Mos Eisley and get the entire confrontation of Han and Greedo, which has been changed back to where it was. It's still kind of the whole thing of Greedo's shooting first, then Han shoots after him, but they kind of decided to kind of tighten up the timing between the entire shots and kind of fuss around with the animation just a tad bit. Doesn't really smooth over the issues people had from 97 onwards about the entire situation here. But then we move into the Jabba the Hutt sequence, which thankfully now, since they've done the Phantom Menace with a brand new CG model of Jabba the Hutt, they decided to plop that one in here over the 97 one, which I did not find to be very good digital effects. This one's better. It's better. Better textures, better detail. But it still feels kind of disconnected from the puppet used in Return of the Jedi, so using digital for one thing and a practical effect for the other, which naturally just causes a discontinuity with the audience in that regard. But after that, We're up on the Death Star after the Millennium Falcon has been brought in by the tractor beam and the entire stormtroopers searching the Falcon. They added one piece of dialogue here from the stormtroopers.
There's no one here.
Now, I don't know if this was like leftover dialogue from a previous mix of the film, like the mono mix or something else like that. I've not heard it in a previous version of the film, and so most likely they had someone record it for the film, for this version of the film, and just drop it in there for reasons whatever. But the interesting little thing is that, okay, we've got additions, but slight subtractions here. We got a little bit of censorship going on because George has now censored a couple of laser blasts on the Imperial troops. Very interesting. And everybody kind of thing saying why he did this. He just did it. And so there's a slight, like a couple extra frames of footage added in to kind of cover up the discrepancy of the stuff you're cutting from the next shot or something else like that, here and there in that regard. So it's a odd type of thing. But one correction they kind of did is that the backdrop that they had for the Cell Bay corridor has been altered and extended now, so the perspective is correct from one shot to the next. And then when they get in the trash compactor sequence after that, with the Dianoga's eye popping up underneath the water, they actually altered the eye to make it look a little more kind of reptilian to a certain degree, with a little bit of a slit to it. And now the eyelid blinks as well, so they kind of just change up the design a little bit and kind of make it look a little more alien and give a little more life to it to a certain degree, I guess. They make it kind of in-universe change here, because what all these characters are speaking to us is English, but in the Star Wars universe, it's kind of known as Basic or Arabic in terms of the written language used, and so they changed kind of the English language markings on like the tractor beam controls that Ben Kenobi is deactivating in A New Hope to Arabic. Just a little thing to kind of shore up the kind of in-universe continuity type of thing to kind of hold together. I don't know, just kind of smooth out everything they've had built up up to 2004 with everything they had for comics and novels and games and various other things like that. So, interesting thing in that regard. But little extra thing is that, okay, everyone knows a little kind of the flub that happens with the one stormtrooper who walks into the control room and bumps his head on the door that didn't go up all the way. And so, on this version, they actually made an audible sound effect bump for when he hits his head on the door.
Take over. See to him.
Also, a little bit of another audio bit of things here is the fact that when had Leia and Luke in that kind of chasm there, trying to close the door behind them and stuff like that to get away from the stormtroopers, they changed the echo reverb effect, because before apparently it wasn't quite as like realistic in that regard, so they kind of went back and re-engineered it to sound a little bit more proper.
Quick, we've got to get across. Find the controls that extend the bridge.
I think I just blasted it.
Quick, we've got to get across. Find the controls that extend the bridge.
I think I just blasted it.
But one particularly positive change they did do here, which was very, very nagging for a lot of people, because even in '97 they did not fix this, is the fact that after the Ben Kenobi Darth Vader saber fight, you had the entire thing of Luke blasting the blast door to close the entire thing, and Vader's saber is so white. They never colored it in any previous version, but for this one, as they were going back through and trying to adjust all the kind of lightsabers and redo things, they finally added the red saber blade for that shot in New Hope. But moving on to The Empire Strikes Back, much less changes for the next two films. With this one particular thing is that apparently a lot of times on the Star Destroyer set, for whatever reason, they decided to kind of flip the negative in some places. Probably felt for whatever it was for the visual geography and the language of the sequence, maybe cutting back and forth between certain things with the Falcon and various other things like that, probably felt it was best to kind of flip this over to make it kind of play in a different direction on screen. Well, that altered the fact that some of the rank insignia on the Imperial officers was now on the wrong side of their chests. Well, now apparently in this version, they have gone through digitally and adjusted that. But more particularly for Empire Strikes Back is the fact that previously, the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back was portrayed in a bit of a myriad of fashions. They actually had actress Marjorie Green being photographed portraying the character with these chimpanzee eyes composite over top of her, but it was actually actor Clive Revill portraying the voice of the Emperor. So it was all this kind of conglomeration of a performance of a character. Obviously later on you get fantastic Ian McDiarmid properly in the role. And so everyone's kind of like, well, it's a little discontinuity there in terms of the actor performing it, the look of the character a little bit, and various other things, kind of like characterization to a certain degree. And so as this was being produced during the prequel trilogy's final chapter of Revenge of the Sith, and you already had Ian McDiarmid doing scenes in that film with the makeup on for the latter half of the film there. They decided to go off and kind of shoot Ian McDiarmid as the Emperor for this version of The Empire Strikes Back for the HoloNet sequence there with Darth Vader. Now, particularly, they do kind of elaborate a little bit on the dialogue, some alternate dialogue written for this sequence here. I don't know, just to kind of expand a little bit on the thing of Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, stuff like that here and there. So, a couple extra little shots, like reverse shot back to Darth Vader, a little extra Vader dialogue, and just saying, how is that possible, stuff like that. It's a little bit of an elaboration on it. It has a bit of a different rhythm and timbre to it than the previous version was, and some people, I don't know. Either way, it fits better with continuity. It's perfectly fine in that regard. It's just a matter of taste. What your taste is about various other things, which comes up to the Boba Fett alterations for this film, because as we're having in the prequel trilogy, in Attack of the Clones, which was already released at this point in time, we now reveal that Boba Fett is a clone of Jango Fett, and so we're no longer going to have Jason Wingreen's distinctive voice for the character. Now we're bringing Tamir Morrison, who portrayed Jango Fett, to also perform the voice of Boba Fett. I don't have a problem with Tamir Morrison. He's a very good actor, but it's the performance of the lines that I have a problem with, because Wingreen's performance just created a very distinct quality of the character. It had a certain grit to it, certain character, certain personality to it. When they bring in Tamir Morrison for it, it feels like they did it in like a 5-minute coffee break.
But I want them alive. No disintegrations.
As you wish. He's no good to me dead. What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me. Put Captain Solo in the cargo hold.
But I want them alive. No disintegrations.
As you wish. He's no good to me dead. What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me. Put Captain Solo in the cargo hold.
There's no personality to it, just like he's just reading the lines and getting on with it. I don't feel like there's any kind of thought or time or craft put into creating the character through the voice work, and that's where I have a problem with it. It just hits a lot more flat than Jason Wingreen's interpretation of the character. Now, there's one other interesting little kind of adjustment done for this film. When we're in the carbon freezing chamber, there's always a thing that when you had the kind of close-ups on Harrison Ford, where he's being chained up, being set into the carbon chamber, as the shadows laid over his shoulders, it seemed like he was wearing his old vest, despite the fact that in Empire Strikes Back, he's not wearing the vest he had in New Hope. He's not wearing a blue jacket. Regardless of that, always kind of threw some fans off, and so Lucasfilm went in and kind of digitally altered the shot to a certain degree to kind of lighten the shadows on his shoulders to make it not so much seem like it was a vest hanging over his shoulders. And so that's the sort of thing that we're kind of feeling like, okay, Lucasfilm kind of responds to some criticism, some things that people had a little twinge about certain elements in some places, but still you're beholden to what Lucas wants to do with the whole thing, so you're not going to go completely back on some things that some of the fans were very much having an uproar about certain alterations to the film. So there's some tweaks here and there to kind of address a certain issue that me feel was kind of a nagging issue here or there. But certainly not everything is blanket being tweaked and fixed and stuff like that, with all little continuities here and there. Just kind of doing a little touches here and there in that regard. But one particular kind of retraction here from the 97 special edition, because as you may remember, in that version, we have Luke and Vader out there in Cloud City having that final duel, and Luke's arm gets chopped off and he decides to plummet down into the chasm. In 97, they added a scream for Luke as he fell down the thing. Now, going forward, it's been removed. And people always felt like there's maybe like an outtake of Ian McDiarmid doing the scream for the Emperor falling down the chasm of the Death Star in Return of the Jedi, which was never fully confirmed, but this has now been retracted and is no longer part of the film going forward from this point. And that's all there is for Empire Strikes Back. For Return of the Jedi, a few little things here. Because one of the things they did was, in some places, they did go in and clean up a lot of matte lines. Most notably, it's in the Rancor sequence. Because because a lot of the times you could definitely see in the previous transfers, stuff like that, you could see the thick black matte line as the hand of the Rancor went off and tried to grab Luke or something else like that, when they had to composite two different elements in. Now they kind of go off, and I think they probably recomposited them digitally, so you wouldn't have those matte lines there to be kind of intrusive in that regard. So they're trying to clean those things up in this regard for this release, and moving forward in that regard as well. But also, just kind of jumps all the way towards the end of the film after this. Like, there's like nothing else changed for this version of Jedi until you get all the way to the point where Luke is unmasking Darth Vader on the Death Star there. They raise Sebastian Shaw's eyebrows because obviously as they're doing Revenge of the Sith and they realize exactly in continuity what caused him to be deformed was being burned alive on Mustafar. Well, they kind of removed the eyebrows because that fits with continuity, that he wouldn't have any of that hair on his face. And they kind of drained a little bit of the skin pigment out of him. They kind of drained a little bit to make it a little bit more pale and kind of sickly in some places. So I think that's kind of a decent enough change. It fits with continuity with where they're going for. I don't feel it's egregious in any type of way. Just it's a subtle change that doesn't affect things in any kind of negative type of way for me. I feel like it's a nice, logical alteration for the scene that fits very well with how you want to portray Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader in the full compass of certain things in that regard. But you do get a little flip side of the whole thing in just a tad bit. But as you go into the entire celebration sequence after the Death Star has been destroyed and various other things like that, we have the kind of tour of the different worlds. They made a little alteration to Coruscant, adding in like the Jedi Temple and the Senate and some places like that, but also they added Naboo on the whole thing. But then after that is where we get into the interesting types of things, where you get the entire thing of the Force Ghosts of Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin showing up at the Endor celebration, and now they've replaced Sebastian Shaw's face with that of Hayden Christensen. And this becomes controversial due to a lot of people's abrasive opinions about the prequels, and this change stems from the idea that Anakin reverts to the version of the character that he was when he was like the most at peace with the Force, which is a little contentious because it's obviously the version that we see in Revenge of the Sith when he's probably at his most conflicted and his most sort of itching on the dark side of it. She turns to the dark side, so it's like odd choice. And certainly a lot of people say, like, we don't really feel like maybe Anakin was ever really entirely at peace with the Force. It always seemed like there's a little bit of a angsty quality to the character when we saw him in 2 and 3, especially. So there's contentious qualities about what Lucas is trying to do with all these different things, changing concepts to conform the original trilogy to now the new ideas for the prequel trilogy, so you can keep altering stuff over here to conform to the new stuff, and that really creates a lot of conflict with the fans and stuff like that. Certainly I've had that kind of abrasive quality about the whole thing. I don't love it. I even went to see Return of the Jedi, the re-release I had about 2 years ago for the 40th anniversary. I kind of grinned and bear through a few alterations they did for the entire film, but still very much enjoyed watching the film on the big screen again because it's a fabulous experience in that regard. But still kind of dealing with these little alterations, like obviously New Hope gets the main bolt of different things. Empire's got kind of splashy things here and there that may be have a little friction here and there about certain people here and there about their opinions of their integration of these ideas and what the reasoning is behind some of these ideas here and there. So here and there, especially when you couple it with the mastering and the color grading and various other technical issues of this release, there's a lot of stuff here for a lot of fans who have chewed on to say there's a lot of issues with this release that people don't have the best opinions about. And of course, talking about just a few other re-releases some of these discs get in the near future after the 2004 release date. I believe in 2005 there was kind of a re-release of these things with just the movie discs and none of the bonus feature disc. But the 2006 one is the particular one because it was the limited edition releases that stuck the original theatrical versions on bonus discs sourced from the 1993 Definitive Collection Laserdisc Masters, which have Dolby Digital 2.0 sound and just non-anamorphic letterbox widescreen transfers. So, not the best things. If 2004, with the thing even being coded for widescreen, having Dolby Digital 5.1 EX sound and all these little things, and it was still kind of having a lot of technical issues for a lot of people, again, with all the stuff I already mentioned. Porting over 13-year-old Laserdisc transfers onto DVD wasn't going to cut it either. Just wasn't going to cut it. Particular type of thing is, okay, since they were noting it as the original theatrical releases, they had to find somewhere to actually source the original opening crawl for the 77 film, because famously, it did not become Episode 4 A New Hope until its 1981 theatrical re-release. So they had to go back and find some sort of source, some print somewhere that still had the original opening crawl, to slap it on there and kind of degrade the quality down to that 93 Laserdisc non-anamorphic quality in that regard. So all little things here, just there's a lot of stuff to kind of grind into you in that regard here. But to say in the summation, this whole thing is like, okay, it was highly anticipated. Like I said, the supplementary materials on the whole things were absolutely just fire. Just absolutely just perfect. They were just really, really perfect. Loved all the quality you got from all that type of stuff. The insights, the new interviews, the trailers, the audio commentaries are pretty alright. But here and there and everywhere, it's like, okay, once you get into the meat of the technical mastering and creating and all the different audio mix qualities, it's just a bit of a flawed release. It needed a lot more oversight in terms of like technical qualities, saying what's the absolute best thing to do for the format. Because a lot of it, as I keep showing all these different comparisons, it just keeps changing almost like on a whim. Like there's no standard for how these films are really supposed to look, because they keep changing from one release to the next. It's a big wild quagmire of interesting, bizarre, inexplicable choices. And this has been a video that I put off for 2 years because I knew this was going to be a very, very involved research process, and certainly making this video has been a very long, daunting process as well. So I don't know if I'm going to do any more of these for the Star Wars franchise, but there's certainly enough things out there that I might entertain it for other properties in some way, shape, or form. But it seems that Lucasfilm is finally giving us exactly what we've wanted for the 50th anniversary, because in 2027 they've officially announced the original theatrical version of the 1977 film will be theatrically re-released, and it's being restored right now. And it's been rumored for a couple months because whoever's been working on the restoration has been auto-uploading little restoration clips somewhere online, and the fans have found them. Have been circulating them around for months now, and people can compare them over to the 4K Blu-rays, or they'll match those, or to 4K 77, they'll match those. Going in, like zooming in on details and every little thing. These are brand new restoration clips, and now it's been officially announced and confirmed it's happening. So all this stuff been kind of pining away on all these retrospectives about preservation and not letting these original theatrical versions getting stuck back in this analog video age that's getting older and older by the day, and not giving it the same level of option that you have and accessibility as all these altered versions with the 4Ks and Blu-rays and all that type of stuff. And now it's happening. We're getting the 4K version of the original Star Wars. No news on Empire or Jedi yet, but obviously probably working on one film at a time, and we'll see what happens. But if they're doing the first film, they probably have plans to make sure they restore Empire and Jedi back to the original 1980 and 83 theatrical versions. And so we'll just have to see what happens in the next year and a half. But it's very exciting to hear that news. But guys, in terms of my video here and all the things I've discussed with the 2004 DVD release of the original Star Wars trilogy, I'd like to hear what you guys feel about it. What your feelings are about how the look and the technical qualities, all little things about it. If you've come across other issues with it or various other things, or exactly which release have you kind of preferred overall in terms of the look, the sound quality, all the different things, the kind of patchwork of changes that have been made to it, which kind of combination do you kind of prefer? If I'm going for any one of them, I'm probably going for the 97 version, just because most of the stuff is least intrusive. I think even the 97 version of Empire is very fine to me to watch and enjoy and stuff like that. But as you get more and more changes, it get a little bit more intrusive on certain things I don't want to change and kind of stuff like that. But anyway, guys, here is your chance to kind of give me your thoughts about that type of stuff, and give me the like on the video if you enjoyed what I've had to discuss here. There's also the Super Things feature here on YouTube to contribute anything monetarily directly to the channel. and on Patreon to contribute anything monthly, but subscribing if you haven't. If you have, thank you very much. Also, sharing links around all the other great stuff helps the channel to grow, stay healthy, and allow me to continue to make great stuff that you guys enjoy. So guys, thanks much. Take care. May the Force be with you.